Hello for a third time. So, after Yusuke and Kuwabara, it was kind of a toss-up between Kurama and Hiei for the next of the core 4 of Yu Yu Hakusho I would talk about. Hiei ultimately won out because I found his struggles with self-doubt more prevalent than with Kurama. Which brings up the question, what scene will we be analyzing with Hiei today? We actually will be analyzing 2 scenes with Hiei. Hiei vs. Zeru, which I briefly mentioned in the Kuwabara video, and Hiei vs. Bui. But why these 2 scenes? Because they represent Hiei's way of dealing with his own self-doubt and problems, taking the negative and turning it into the positive and acknowledging your self-doubt. But, as always, some context will be required. Hiei, all his life, has been outcasted. When he was born, he was almost immediately cast away for being born from a fire demon in a tribe of all-female ice maidens. So right away, literally from birth, he's already been instilled with the idea that he is an outsider and that is a bad thing. This is made worse when his only family growing up, a group of bandits that found him, eventually reject him and choose to cast him out. This is made even worse by the Jigan eye surgery. Now his problem of feeling like a freak or outsider goes from an internal problem that he struggles with to now an external problem that he also has to struggle with. Most people, upon seeing him for the first time, directly insult his eye and how it looks. Yusuke calls it a pimple when they meet for their first fight.
That's some pimple.
It's the Jigan, a third eye for the spirit.
And Zeru, right before their fight, calls the Jigan eye a flaw and insults Hiei for having it.
Great precision that it resembled a knife cut, but one of the edges was sloppily melted. You have your flaw.
As do you. I don't think I need advice from someone who has to use a fake eye.
Despite Hiei acting like these insults don't affect him, they very clearly do, based on his reaction in the fight later with Zeru. The Jigan eye in general is very much feared in Demon Society. I mean, just look at the reaction of the crowd when he uses the Dragon of the Darkness Flame on Zeru. Hiei possessing it makes his outcast feeling even worse. He's even an outcast in the main group. Yusuke is a human, Kuwabara is a human, and Kurama is a demon in a human body. Hiei is the only one who isn't a human in some way in the main group. He's so distant because he feels so different. Little side note, Hiei has never heard of rock, paper, scissors. The implications of that is kinda crazy, cause that means like during his childhood he never like played games or bonded with anybody, which is super sad, which supports why he can't really bond with any of the core 4 all that well. Heck, you could even go as far to say that he didn't tell Yukina that he was her twin, not just because he was told not to, but also because he doesn't feel worthy of being her brother. She was born a perfect ice maiden and he simply wasn't. The Jigan eye and the attacks it creates represent Hiei's internal struggles with being different, which is why... Alright, time to get the describing the scene music. Alright, nope, okay, that's just a bird. There it is. When Hiei is brought to the brink of death by Zeru, it forces him to confront these problems. It forces him to think about what Zeru said to him. All his life, and also in this fight, he has been judged for how he looks and what he is. But he finally bites back against those claims in this fight when he says to Zeru,
So my Jigan eye may not be natural, but it does give me exactly what I need!
With those words, Hiei never denies what Zeru had said. He just turns his negative statements into something positive for himself. And he is right. The Jigan eye does give him everything he needs to defeat Zeru. With one use of Dragon of the Darkness Flame, Zeru is reduced to nothing but ash, destroying him completely and getting another win for Team Urameshi. Which brings me to my next point, about the Dragon of the Darkness Flame. More specifically, what it represents. The Dragon of the Darkness Flame, besides being a crazy destructive attack, represents something way deeper for Hiei's character. It's how he views himself in comparison to others. The dragon is this big demonic entity that consumes and does nothing but kill everything in its path. and it is feared by most of demon society, at least the weaker demons. And just like the dragon, Hiei is also feared by a majority of demon society, who just see him as a killing machine and a monster. Even his bandit family thought this way about him. The dragon is a physical representation of what Hiei has been told all his life and what he thinks he is because of the rejections he's faced. Nothing but a destructive monster who will only hurt people around him. It's the reason why he can't form good connections. Heck, the dragon is so destructive that it even hurts Hiei himself. Hiei believes that he doesn't help anybody, not even himself. He only can harm. Going back to Zeru for a second, Hiei never denies what he says about the Jiganai because he fully believes that he's an outcast, because that's all he's been told his whole life. Hence why he doesn't really connect with anybody on Team Urameshi and is always sort of distant. Because he thinks of himself as nothing but a dragon that will hurt and harm anybody who he tries to connect with. Feelings he will deal with in his fight against Bui. In this fight, all the problems Hiei has been dealing with come to a head in the form of absorbing the dragon. Hiei takes advantage in the earlier stages of the fight, but Bui later, through stripping his armor, forces Hiei to use the dragon. But, as Koto points out, the dragon is different. It's stronger. Since the dragon represents how Hiei views himself and his negative emotions, then the dragon being at its strongest must mean that those negative emotions are at their strongest as well, proving that Zeru's fight significantly affected how Hiei thought of himself, even more so than usual. And being how a weaker version of this same dragon messed up Hiei's arm for days, a stronger version would probably kill him. But Hiei uses it regardless, because it's the only thing that he thinks can beat Bui. I mean, all his life he's only relied on those murderous urges, so why wouldn't it work here? Hiei lets the dragon consume him, in a way, in order to beat Bui, by giving into those emotions. But despite this sacrifice, Bui manages to reflect the attack and seemingly destroy Hiei, inadvertently giving him an even greater path to power. But before Juri can call the victory in Bui's favor, Hiei comes back. But he's different now. He's stronger. Hiei has absorbed the dragon, and it has given him the power required to defeat Bui. Through consuming an all-consuming dragon, Hiei is able to turn a negative into a positive and win. He finally accepts what people think about him when he says,
I have the power of the Black Dragon, because now I am the dragon.
Now you might be wondering, what does turning negative into a positive even mean? I've been talking about it all this time, but I haven't really said what it meant for Hiei's character. Well, what turning negative into a positive means for Hiei is accepting what people think about him and what he thinks about himself and using it for betterment and improvement. Hiei absorbing the dragon is him accepting what people think about him, what he's been told all his life, and what he thinks of himself. Because in a way, the fear is justified, it's true. He did do horrible things. He has killed people. He never denies people's fear of him or even what Zeru said because he believes it's true as well. But rather than letting those negative thoughts completely consume him, he accepts this title. And in this scene, he finally accepts who he is when he says he is the dragon. He has turned those negative thoughts into something positive. Strength, betterment. He wants to improve from that. You can see this improvement firsthand when he decides to spare Bui. It's the first little bit of mercy he ever shows an opponent. Now, he doesn't do this in the nicest of ways, but it's still him ultimately showing mercy, showing that he wants to get better. And now that he has people like Yukina and his friends who care about him, he is at last able to overcome his feelings of self-doubt and exile. He finally acknowledges his own self-doubt, turning those negative feelings into something positive. Now, let's wrap this all up. All in all, Hiei has been struggling his entire life with self-doubt about where he belongs. He doesn't feel like he belongs with Team Urameshi or with Yukina. But in these two scenes, he finally accepts these issues and turns them into something positive. Acknowledging that you have an issue is a great way to start improving on it, which is what Hiei begins doing almost immediately. Fighting and strength are a positive in Hiei's eyes, so turning those negative things into a motivation for strength would be a great improvement for him. Think of it like a person with bad self-esteem hitting the gym so they can feel better about themselves. Hiei improves not by challenging his issues like Yusuke, or finding a positive support system like Kuwabara, but by embracing them and improving because of it, and using that as motivation, which is incredibly admirable of him. Hiei finally decides to move past his problems and overcome his self-doubt, which is why I respect Hiei as a character.